What's up, guys? Today we're going to take a dive into the story of Ashley Fletcher. Now, Ashley Fletcher's story is very disturbing, so viewer discretion is advised. But before we get into the story today, make sure y'all please smash the like button and smash the sub button. If y'all don't smash the sub and the like button, I hope the next time y'all have Taco Bell back to back, there is not any toilet paper.
We begin with a case that has been hard for even the most seasoned investigators to forget. Last January, what was left of her rotting 100-pound body was found embedded, melted into a couch in her parents' Louisiana home.
He's seen a lot of neglect before. He said he's never seen a case like this.
Today's story is coming out of a small town called Slaughter, Louisiana. Now, Slaughter has a population of about 1,000, and despite its horrible name, it's a pretty peaceful town. These are the streets that Lacey Fletcher grew up on. And this is the house that Lacey Fletcher grew up in with her parents, Sheila and Clay. Now, Sheila and Clay were very respected in their community, and a lot of people looked up to them. Now, Clay was a member of the Baton Rouge Civil War Roundtable, and also a member of the Planning and Zoning Committee in his town. His wife, Sheila, was an assistant to the city prosecutor. Now, Sheila and Clay went to church every weekend, and they were very kind and generous to everyone in the community.
They go to church, every weekend, and do anything for anybody.
Now, if you just sit back and think about it, it's pretty scary to think that some of the world's worst people are hidden in just plain sight. January 3rd, 2022, around 2 a.m., Sheila would grab the phone and call 911. She would tell 911 that her 36-year-old daughter had stopped breathing. She didn't really give that many details, but it almost sounded like that she was actually blaming her daughter for passing away. But when paramedics would arrive at Lacey's home, they would discover a scene that would scar them for life. Immediately, the paramedics would call the police, the news station, and the town coroner, Dr. Bickham. Dr. Bickham would later say whenever he arrived at the scene and walked in the house, he was hit with a very strong odor. Now, this odor was fecal matter and urine. He said you could not hold your breath, and that's just to put it lightly. Now, Dr. Bickham has been the town's coroner for 30 plus years, so it's safe to assume that he has seen his fair share of disturbing sights and also smelled his fair share of disturbing smells.
Dr. Ewell Bickham could not release specifics with a pending grand jury hearing, but told me in his 30 years as a practicing physician, he could not eat for a week and cried for a week. Everyone
that stepped foot in that house on July 3rd were marked for life. The sheriff was also quoted saying, "I have been a sheriff here for 6 years, and I have had a lot of things happen here in East Valencia Parish. But this type of scene is by far the worst." Lacey didn't just stop breathing that day. She had stopped living the way that we know many years ago. When the paramedics found Lacey, she was basically fused with the living room couch. Her skin had melted into the living room couch long before she passed away. Dr. Bickham concluded that the only way this could have happened was if Lacey hadn't moved from that couch for about 12 years. The autopsy report said Lacey's cause of death was acute medical neglect, dating back to 2010. The couch was filled with waste, and Lacey was completely red from her waist down. She had been sleeping in a makeshift toilet for a very long time. The autopsy details are way too gruesome to even bring up in this story. But just to summarize, while their daughter was melting to the couch in the center of their home, Sheila and Clay went to church They praised God, and they acted like complete heroes to their community. But they got arrested, and they was charged with unaliving their daughter. But it would be a long and hard investigation that would reveal even more sinister things about this family. As a child, Lacey was diagnosed with severe Asperger's syndrome, but that would not impact her social life in the first couple of years. She went to public school, and her peers knew her as a vocal and outgoing person. She was on the volleyball team, and she was perfectly able to work with any sort of team or group of people. One of her former friends remembered, Lacey Fletcher was one of the nicest people you could ever meet, and she always made her friends feel so welcome. There was not a bad bone in her body. People remembered Lacey as being kind and quiet, but she was also very vocal when it came to voicing her opinions. She was also very quick to help anyone who seemed like they needed a helping hand. But when Lacey was around 14 years old, her parents pulled her out of school and began homeschooling her. Reportedly, her autistic behaviors worsened as a teenager.
Just knew she was, different. She used to come out and, walk, but I hadn't seen Lacey in 5 years.
Lacey spoke less and interacted less with people around her. Neighbors would see her walk around her house, but they would also say that she wasn't as friendly or outgoing anymore. One neighbor would say that she became very different. She just didn't see things anymore the way other kids saw them. Asperger's syndrome is a form of an autistic spectrum disorder. It's a development disorder. Young people with Asperger's syndrome have a very hard time relating to other people socially, and their behavior and thinking patterns can be rigid and repetitive. In other words, Asperger can impact your social life, so you may not seem as mature as others your age. She still liked children's things instead of teenage things. When she was 17 or 18 years old, she was still into Disney movies and listening to country music. She would invite her friends over to watch Disney movies with her, but her friends really wasn't into Disney movies anymore because they was all 18, 19 years old. People around Slaughter started seeing Lacey less and less, until one day they didn't see her at all. Being an adult, they just assumed that she left town and moved on with her life. Nobody knew that Lacey was melting to her parents' couch just a few houses down. Here is where the situation gets a little bit crazy. There are two conflicting reports of Lacey in her 20s. One report states that Lacey was suffering from a condition called locked-in syndrome. This is a very rare condition where the patient is completely sound of mind but is completely unable to move any parts of their body. According to this report, Lacey became locked into her position with her legs crossed on the couch. But according to the other report, Dr. Yule denies Lacey of having this syndrome. Dr. Yule says, "I don't know where that term came from, I don't know what source that term came from, but all my years as a physician, I have never heard of that term before." The only diagnosis that I know she did have was social anxiety and severe autism, and that's it. Those are her only two diagnoses. Now, the first report was said to help her parents' case. She was stuck in a cross-leg position, that's why she would not move from the couch. But it would not explain why her family didn't take her to the doctor and why they just let her sit there and rot on that couch. Monday, January 3rd, 2022, when they called 911, Sheila and Clay just had returned from a weekend trip. Lacey was left by herself in that house, unable to get food and water for 3 days. Another neighbor of the family said about that day, "We don't know who it was or who had supposedly seen Lacey on the couch like that, but they would tell Lacey's parents they needed to call the police." I don't know how much of that is true, but if it weren't for that neighbor telling the parents to call the police, would her parents just simply have buried her in the backyard?
We begin with a case that has been hard for even the most seasoned investigators to forget.
Lacey's story made headlines in Louisiana, then in the U.S., and then around the world. Stuff like this doesn't just simply happen.
Last January, what was left of her rotting 100-pound body was found embedded, melted into a couch in her parents' Louisiana home.
And it's really good that they just don't happen all the time. But if you think about it, how many people do you think are out there that are suffering like this? Lacey was just 96 pounds when she was taken from her home. The autopsy report confirmed chronic malnutrition, acute starvation, immobility, acute ulcer formation, osteotitis, also known as bone infection, and last but not least, sepsis. This was not the first time that her parents left her unable to feed herself. She had been in a state of near starvation for years. And that was just one of the unspeakable horrors that she had to live through for decades. When Sheila and Clay were arrested, they didn't show not 1 ounce of remorse. And Sheila would claim that she had cleaned her daughter's sores. What? She was completely covered in waste. It was in her ears and even her mouth. But she cleaned her sores. Lacey died of sepsis. Shockingly, just 36 hours later, her parents were released on a $300,000 bond. May 2nd, 2022, Sheila and Clay was on trial for taking their daughter's life. Photos was shown to the jury from the crime scene and also from the coroner's office. Whenever the jury would see the photos, they would gasp in shock and also cry. These photos were never released to the public. By the end of the trial, the jury would find Sheila and Clay guilty of second-degree murder. However, their lawyer is still working trying to get their charges reduced to manslaughter. After they posted bail, they would go on to say that they don't want to have to deal with losing a child through the media. They have endured enough pain throughout the years, and anyone who has lost a child knows where they're coming from. What? How can this be about them at all? Anyone knows if they've ever lost a child. They took their own child's life. They let their child sit on that couch for years and years, rotting away. This is all their fault. They cannot play victim here, apart from complaining about cleaning her daughter's sores. Lacey's parents claim that their daughter was of sound mind in making her own choices, and they also say it was her choice that she never left the couch. How could they possibly blame their child for sitting and rotting on the couch? They had 12 years to call a doctor and get their child medical attention. No parent in their right mind could live with that sight or smell. Lacey had been going to the bathroom on herself on that couch for so long that the floorboards underneath the couch was starting to decompose and rot.
We spoke with the coroner last year. He said, look, I deal with death every day, and this is something that I can't even get out of my head. The smell was just awful. He said the minute he walked into that house, he left and actually had to vomit in the front yard.
And yet her parents lived like this like it was nothing. They just thought that this is what they had to do as their daughter refused to move.
This is her parents were coming and going, living normal lives, going to work. Meanwhile, they have their daughter who had not gotten up from the sofa in what the coroner estimates was possibly years.
This tragic case has one last shocking twist. In the summer of 2023, Sheila and Clay Fletcher's charges were completely dropped after the judge had discovered that prosecutors had mistakenly used defective language for charges of cruelty against infirm people.
They were charged with murder and cruelty to the infirm, and from our understanding, it can't be both. And so, as the DA was kind of looking at everything, their lawyers filed some court motions that basically had those charges removed. So the new indictment was tossed on a technicality, but we did speak with the district attorney, and he says he plans on bringing it back up and having this couple re-indicted because he believes justice won't be served until they serve jail time.
It's crazy to think that these people aren't already in prison, and it's taken so much work to put these people behind bars. In the summer of 2023, just a year and a half later after Lacey was found, her parents were still walking free.
We're just outraged by this. Is there a chance that if this mother and father of Lacey Fletcher's re-indicted, could it be a lesser charge, or will it still be murder?
When we spoke with the DA, it sounds like he's trying to press on and go after these two people on the murder charge because of what had happened to Lacey.
It really makes you question what could have happened to Sheila and Clay for them to be so removed from humanity. To think it's normal to live in that smell next to your rotting daughter and absolutely feel no remorse for her, to let her starve for 3 days as you go on vacation. Something must have happened in these people's childhood as well. Whenever you have a child, you have a responsibility. You have to keep them clean, fed, and clothed. That's just the bare minimum. If you can't do that, then don't have kids. It's very simple. Here's a piece of good news though. At the end of June 2023, the couple was rearrested and charged once again for second-degree murder. The district attorney Sam D'Aquila said, "We will ensure there is justice for Lacey, and the public will know that caregivers will be charged for neglecting or abusing a person in their care." As of October 2023, Sheila and Clay are yet to receive their sentences. Anyone following the case feels for Lacey, and they really hope to see Lacey's parents spend the rest of their life in prison. If you ever see something that doesn't look right or someone that doesn't look right, pick up the phone and call someone who can help. There is no telling how many kids are out there being neglected, and they can just be saved with one phone call. Well, that's a wrap for today, guys. Make sure you hit that like button and hit the sub button. I love y'all, and I will see y'all on the next one. I'm out.